Hey guys, Harry here, and I'm back with another Bricklaying vlog. Today we're going through how I like to build a dog leg or an internal on either a front of a house or whether it's on a boundary wall or whatever. In this instance it's on the front of an house. It's got an in and out as they call it, but it's just basically an internal corner, dog leg, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes there'll be an expansion on an internal, sometimes not. On these particular houses, some have the expansions on the internals, some don't. Some have them on gables, some have them on the back. It just depends on the house. So this particular house, it's just on the front, normal internal brickwork. Obviously, because this is the nosebleeding fourth lift, as you can see, all the battens are right up to the last course of brick laid, and there's no room to get you level down the side of the scaffold. So I decided on this day to do an internal setup for this front. I'd have normally built this with a level if it was at the correct scaffold height, because it's only a small internal. But doing this, obviously I only needed one brick showing with my aluminiums, and I'm using some gable profiles, if you know what they are. They're for a traditional style gable with like dental oversailers or just normal still saw cuts on your bricks. It's for when you're not using a fascia and soffit. These gable profiles are ideal as stabilizers for aluminiums. It's something that obviously is a little bit less commonly used now because of a lot of steel stabilizers, blakes. People use a 90-degree piece of timber, 90-degree T-squares if you want to call them that. But I find these gable profiles a lot more versatile. You only need a little bit of lat that you can only find laying around on any job, and then you can adjust them with their actual, up and down the lat instead of having to unclamp the lat every time. You can just adjust them, and I just found them a little bit more easier to set up personally. But when it comes to the internals, I've just got one F-clamp strapped around the bottom, obviously, as you can see on the external with a stabilizer, and then obviously one on the internal, as you can see on the internal corner over there. I'm using F-clamps. This would have been perfect on the internal for the T-clamp. I've ordered some, they're on the way, so I'll be using those next time. And really, this would have been better on, like, say, a band lift, setting it up like this. If I'd set a little internal corner out, over the garage the first time, this would have been better on the band lift. This would have saved a lot of time, in fact. But I will aim to do it again like this when I next get to a band lift of this type. And this was, and if the scaffold had been correct height, I probably could have just built it as quick with a level. But this internal setup did make it a lot easier. I probably will do it like this again if I leave a little bit more on the fourth lifts next time, because I've had a look over the prices and it'd make a lot more sense leaving a bit more on the fourth lift, because the prices are working out quite a bit better than the measure. So even with leaving, instead of 12 course, even leaving 15 or 16 course on a fourth lift would be ideal for something like this with the internal. Another thing that I haven't done on this video, I didn't put a slip tie at the bottom of the profile to allow for the line, but it's still built plumb. It just needs a little bit of tweaking with a little bit of paper and a few little little pointing trowel, a little bit of a tie wire halfway up to keep it plumb. But that's something I'll do next time, and it'll be a lot easier with T-clamps anyway. I'll not have to keep moving the F-clamps around. As you can see, I mentioned this in a video before, I like to rack back up to my window profiles, 2 or 3 course before I get to the window profile. That's because it just stops you getting your plumb points out of square. It can happen on your front, on the front pillars of your house or the back pillars. I always like to leave a nice rack back, so when I pull the line across, the length of the building, If there's any discrepancy, it'll pull the corner back in square, and it may be pulling your corner slightly out of plumb by 5 or 6 mil, but it'll make your plot look a lot better when someone comes to have a look at it. It'll make everything run square, everything will cut nicely above, and it's mostly important for lifts when you're squaring around to floor, but it's also important for when you're doing to wall plate on your fourth lift, because it's just one of those where if someone comes in as a look and puts their eye down your in the back of your house or the front, when it's at roof, like a manager or inspector, and it looks nice and straight, they're not going to look again. Whereas if it looks like it's sort of the corners are bowing out and then it goes straight, it just don't look appealing. It just looks like something's wrong. So that's why I do it. It does take a little bit more time than building it just stop end, with a little steel on the end. But it ensures your plot's square. Another way you can get around this as well is if you're building your return corners, try to pull them in through from the other side of the plot, if you're on a straight. So don't plumb from the reveal, just pull it through the whole length of the house. The only disadvantage with this is that you spend a lot of time walking backwards and forwards down the back of the house, to pull it through. If the house is small enough, if it's narrow enough, should I say, it's probably worth doing. And if you've got a long enough run, it's definitely worth doing. But if you're only doing, a somewhat small return, like I am on these fourth lifts, it's just easier done with a level. If the plot isn't square, and you can't easily hook one on. Also, you saw me doing that at the start. I like to do all my cuts before I start building any sort of pier work, whether it's the side of window formers, because a lot of these windows don't work modular gauge. They work half, 3/4, whether that's 160s, 170s or 180s, with some halves. I always cut my halves at 110 or 105 as you could say, or 106. I just snap the brick dead in half and I get 2 halves out of a brick, and they cut really nice in the middle. And I know sometimes it doesn't always work great with your bond, but that extra few mil, it just keeps on your half, just keeps your perps a little bit tighter, I find, on these pillars, and just looks a little bit neater overall. Because when you start getting big pillars, big joints on piers, it just don't look as appealing, especially half, 3/4. Half, 3/4 needs to be nice, tight joints. The tighter the better, and obviously it just stops that zipper bond looking. It stops it looking as much of a zipper joint as it does when you've got big perps on a half, 3/4. So that's a lot of the times what these windows are working. It's just one of them things, but I find it easier to do all the cuts first, and then sometimes you won't. I might do half the cuts and then half the cuts again halfway up. I used to do it in between pointing, but with these bricks you don't have to point up till the end of the day anyway, because they're very they're very soapy, as I like to say. They like to keep the wetness throughout the day, so that isn't a problem here. But definitely if you're waiting around for Gobbo, or you're waiting for hod carrier to bring you bricks, or any whatever, if you're waiting for any reason, I like to always do my cuts first. It's a great thing to do. I'm going to do it more often on lifts like this. It's probably more beneficial on like a ground floor lift, when you've up your patio door, etc. And I like to make any windows and doors work modular when I can, but it's probably really only your bathroom windows you can really move a little bit, 10 or 20 mil to make a modular, or you'll normally find one side will work modular, one side will work half, 3/4, something like that. So it's one of those things. But yeah, as you can see, it's a really tight, the old man, he stacked the bricks right on this corner, and I did try and move them halfway through, but it was quite a tight corner, as you can see, and I am bent double here. So this is a big reason why I did it. I just took away the level work, and obviously, if you can see, I haven't got it really to any gauge marks, but I was just using the tape measure, measuring every course 75 mil, and I had to bump up about 10 mil or so, just to keep in with the front pillar, the front corners. and it seemed to run all level. Everything tended to run level. I found that the brickwork on this, the blockwork on the front, which I built from sort of joist, when I took over this band lift, it was running quite low, so I didn't have to, it was running to gauge compared to the rest, so I didn't really have to bump up this middle pillar as much as I would have had to on the I still had quite a bit of a bump, because obviously the corners were bumped up quite a bit to accommodate for the blockwork, but this, it wasn't so much of a drastic bump, because obviously everything was running pretty much gauge, so I sort of split the difference. And when I did actually put the levels on the lintels on this and leveled it across with a big level, it all ran level and everything ran pretty nicely. So, I'm one of these, as long as you get your, as long as you make sure your band lift, your datums from your band lift, and every corner's running to the same measurement, you don't have to really sweat on your fourth lift, as long as you're to them formers on your fourth lift there, and you set them right on your band lift, you haven't really got to worry about using laser levels or checking everything excessively. It is nice to do something like that, but I don't have a laser level at the moment, and I think with these traditional type of roofs, with the fascia and soffit just cables, they're not so much of an issue, when you're only putting you're putting 4 wall plates on for the smart roof, but they're not the end all be all. There is a bit of tolerance, 10-20 mil over the length of a house, so you ain't got to really worry when it comes to that sense, and it's just something else to slow you down if you're stressing about measurements and stuff. Normally here, as you can see on my stop ends, I'd have used a steel, obviously, if I'd have had a little bit more to run in with, because I was only going 12 course. I didn't really bother with a plumb point steel at the plumb point aluminium at the here where I'm plumbing. I normally do on the gables. It's just on this front, because I was racking back after so many courses, I just didn't see the point. And I do keep an eye on these profiles, these internals. I do tend to want to move, but this stabilizer makes a big difference, and once it's set, you shouldn't really have to check it again. I was maybe a bit anxious fiddling with it, because I haven't done tons of internal setups. This is probably second time I've set one up on a house, because I've never been a big profile guy in the past, but since I've been sort of persevering with profiles and stuff over the last year. At least the last year to 6 months, I'd say more in the last 6 months, I've been really experimenting more with profiles and showing that they can be effective, especially for someone like me who isn't a natural. I'm not a massive profile guy. I was never one for setting them up years ago, and now I'm just sort of getting into them a bit more and finding the uses for them, definite the uses, because especially along with pick and dip, the profiles, they make a massive difference, because as you can see, I'm picking and dipping every brick, and it's just a little bit less effort, a little bit less, just bending up and down with the levels a big deal as well. Obviously this is a nosebleeder, but normally, you wouldn't have to be up and down for your level. It makes a big difference. So yeah, this brings me on to my first topic of the video, or second topic if you class the internals as topic. One massive tip I'd recommend, for anyone who's trying to just up their efficiency and just make life a little bit easier, bring an extra set of levels to work with you. Obviously, I'm always a big proponent of the 6 foot level, but bring an extra 2 foot, and if you have space, bring an extra 4 foot. The 4 foot isn't most essential, but as long as you've got a 6 foot and a 4 foot and 2 2-foots, it's a lot easier. I like to have a 2 foot each reveal, and that's especially good on the backs when you've got, say, 2 windows on the back of an house, and you put 1 2 foot in each window. It makes it a lot easier, because normally you're not going to be going 2 foot above your windows anyway on a third lift, or on a band lift, should I say. So it's really ideal to have. And having, I normally have 2 4-foots, to be honest. I used to bring 2 4-foots, but because I didn't really find myself using the second one very often, I just stuck with one. And you know, especially with if you're using more profiles, you know, you only need one 4-foot level. That's very, very much ideal. I used to use 2 4-foots when I was building boundary walls all the time with big corners, but obviously now with my more sort of my more advocation of profiles, you know, it's something I'm just moving more and more away from. So yeah, that's one thing I recommend. There is like stuff like tool belts and stuff that, you know, could be recommended, obviously, if you have the right build for them. But obviously with these tight scaffolds, and you know, as you can see, there's not that many scaffold boards on these scaffolds. They're not a big scaffold, and it's just something else for you to catch yourself on these narrow tubes, where the way they're setting these scaffolds out, they're putting a board and then a tube and then like 4 boards behind that, and or 4 or 5 boards, and it's just really shitty sometimes how they set them out. And that's a big reason why I'm not really feeling any tool belts at the moment. One of my goals with obviously all this running I'm doing, and you know, sort of miniature weight loss in a sense, is to sort of maybe transition to wearing something like that in the future, but not for now. I just don't feel it fits my build at the moment. You know, it definitely has its advantages being thin, you know, being like small, as I said. I won't call it thin, but being small. Obviously on scaffolds, the smaller guys can fit into tighter areas. Obviously myself, I'm not mega tall, I'm only like 5'8", but 5'9" if I got my insoles in my boots. So, you know, it does benefit you just being a bit smaller and just making your area a bit smaller when you're weaving in and out of scaffolds. It just makes your day a little bit easier. That's what I found when I was a bit leaner and a bit smaller. I could fit into spaces easier. I felt more athletic, and it just makes these days like this, that I was sweating my head off on this day, it'd have made this a lot easier if I'd have, you know, been in a little bit of smaller, a bit of more fitter shape. So that's one thing that I'm trying to do, you know, working towards my professionalism in a sense when it comes to bricklaying, as much as you can be. It just has a lot of benefits overall. You know, I've been lean for a number of years. If you watch some of my throwback videos, you'll see I'm a lot smaller, and that's sort of the size I'm going to get back to in due course. But yeah, I could definitely see, you know, a lot of progress being made over winter, with the use of profiles, with the getting fitter, etc. Especially when I'm going to have a good workforce, you know, behind me. They've got the missus, my good friend, who's going to be working with me 5 days a week as well, or at least 4. And the missus a couple of days a week. It's going to all work towards everything working out better, and it just makes your day easier. At the end of the day, this is what a lot of bricklayers forget. You have a labourer to make your day easier, not to just pay someone and it still be as hard. And that's what I've been finding a lot lately with a lot of new starters and them not sticking. I find I'm paying someone, and you know, they're speeding me up to an extent, but it's not actually making my day easier, because you know, a lot of the time I'm having to, you know, do a lot of micromanaging, a lot of keeping on the back with things, and it is a lot going on in the mind. And the biggest thing I like to talk about, what I talk about with bricklaying, is, you know, it's meant to be therapeutic. I don't care who you are, you know, if you're stressed out laying bricks, you're doing it wrong, and that's, you know, you're meant to be relaxed while laying bricks. This is how you get into something that's called a flow state, where you become really efficient and really relaxed, and you get the most amount done. You become the fastest when you reach that state. And that is what you've got to aim to achieve in bricklaying. And if you're working with someone who isn't allowing you to get into that mindset and get into that relaxed rhythm and flow, you know, it's counterproductive. It just tires you out. Like the first day, I had one of the lads who were on the trowel. You know, it was getting his tie wires skew width on the block. He was putting too much spread on. I was having to say no, stop, and it was stressful. It was stressful, and like I say, people don't want to listen. You know, especially youngsters. No one wants to listen. I find, you know, some of the older, you know, if you're employing someone in the 30s opposed to the 20s, they're more accustomed to listen to you than, you know, someone who's just a teenager. You know what I mean? So it's one of them. You know, you get less attitude from someone who's a bit more mature. and they're easier to work with. You know, a lot of the time they have families, they want to work, they want to, you know, they want to turn up and they want to get stuff done. And I just find those kind of people a bit easier to work with. Obviously, like, you know, with the missus, she's a semi, you know, although I'll be paying her same as everyone else, you know, it's a bit of it is free in a sense, because money's still entering the same household I live in, so she is basically effectively working for free, because she's earning money that otherwise she wasn't earning before. So it is effectively just more money for us in a sense. So that's what I'm looking forward to in a sense as well. If she does enjoy it and she does want to stick with it, you know, it's going to be a massive bonus for the family, more than just myself. You know, and this is what I go to work for the family. You know, I do all the money I earn is for the family. It's not my own in a sense. It's, you know, I don't, when you've got a wife and kids, you know, I don't ever see, you know, I'm not of this mentality that, you know, that's my money. I see it as that's our money as a family, you know. So as our little family, not the whole fucking family, but as our little family. And, you know, it's something that it'll bring a lot more satisfaction to my work day. You know, seeing my wife more often, and it's one of them. It's a bonus. It's all wins for me in that sense. So I'm looking forward to this next few months. It'll make winter a lot more interesting and a lot more bearable when, you know, we've got good people around. So yeah, you know, I'm looking forward to it, especially with some of these little time-saving tips I've been realising every day as well. Like there's stuff I'm addressing every day to make me a little bit faster. I'm learning every day as well. Although, you know, you'll see me building soldiers, doing these houses, and you'll think, oh, well, you must have done tons of houses before. And, you know, I've done a lot of housing over the years, but I've not built tons and tons of lifts solo. You know, it's only something that I've been doing, you know, as a one-on-one for the last 4 or 5 years. And a lot of the times I want on housing, you know, I was on housing for a stint, but I've not done lift after lift after lift on the same site for years and years and years. So it's been nice for me to get up to speed again on housing. And obviously it's the same for whether you've been building houses for 10 or 20 years. When you go on a different site, you know, 20, 30 years, you go on a different site, you're going to be slower than you were on the last site, just learning the houses anyway. So it's always a little bit of a learning experience, no matter how experienced you are. But for myself, it's been a nice change of pace, a nice refresher on housing. It's been interesting a lot of the time with, you know, getting houses ready for superstructure inspection and stuff like that. You know, it's opened my eyes a bit to the standard I was working to before. And, you know, because obviously I did a lot of remedials for a number of years and fixing people's shit work, it just shows, I get a bit of satisfaction in, you know, that my work I'm producing is spot on, no pulls on the last plot, and presumably I'll get no pulls on this one if everything goes to plan. You sometimes can't help if you've took over a plot and there's tie wire below sticking out, or there's something that's, you know, incorrect on, you know, on the plot below, on the lift below, that if you didn't build the whole house. So, you know, there is that aspect. But if your work's, you know, dead on and everything that you've built has no pulls, I count that as a you know, a house with, you know, zero, you know, with no pulls on the inspection. So that is something I've liked to, you know, it gives you a little bit of pride in your work when you're building a house, than rather a boundary wall or a footing that just gets buried after you built it, or a wall that just gets, you know, you put a top on it and that's it, you know, fucking shovel a load of topsoil over your wall and fucking that's it, it's done. They move in and you don't ever see it again because there's someone living there. Whereas, you know, a house, you know, you can stand back, look at it from the roadside and think, yeah, that was fantastic. And that's something that I sort of, for years, because of the prices of houses and the prices on housing back when the prices were about, you know, half of what they are now, you know, it was something, obviously, because I was less experienced, I did struggle to make money at. So that's why I sort of stayed clear of housing for a long time. And it's been nice to get back into it and it, you know, earn very good money on it again, because because of the prices, because of the simplicity of the houses that I'm building as well. You can see your way through them, whereas houses with a lot of detail, you're always, because you a lot of the time you're not earning any money for all that detail. And it's normally houses with a lot of detail, the more sort of higher class, sometimes they're more expensive. Sometimes the managers wanting awards and they're harassing you for little bits and little. I've had managers come up and they're harassing you for just something and nothing, just little bits of, you watch out for this, watch out for that, and it's stressful. Whereas like this site particularly, manager comes up, says, tidy work, fucking no problem whatsoever, no problems at all, no stress. And I found on a lot of sites that's just not the case in housing. They're up on your scaffold, watch out for this, watch out for that, and I like the fact that they do just one inspection at roof, at wall plate height, because it allows you to just do all your cavity tapping in one go, and you don't have to touch that plot again until the roof goes on. And I just find it's a lot more complete structure to doing it, whereas a lot of time we used to have to get inspected at joist and then do all the block work first and point all the joist ends, and just so much more to think about when literally the house is built, someone just looks down the cavity, make sure everything's tidy, and boom, jobs are good. And I just find it's a lot more simple that way, and that's what's making it just so much more pleasurable to build houses on these sites. And it has its ups and downs. There's no site that's perfect, but from what I've been used to over the years and years, working on Red Rose sites, particularly working on a site where they're happy with the standard of your work and they're not always trying to find fault with it, is refreshing. It's refreshing because obviously around the recession time and into the early 2010s and 2011s, when I was in college first starting bricklaying, when on building sites, it was because of the financial crash, there was the tolerances were getting tighter and tighter and tighter, and they were wanting everything they're wanting more for less money. And this is now obviously the fact with boom times, it turns a little bit opposite. They're a bit more lenient. But because of the shortage of bricklayers now, these managers they can see the difference between, if they're a decent manager, they can see the difference between a good bricklayer and a chancer, and you stand out more these days because of the lack of bricklayers. If you are decent, if you are neat, and your work's done in a pretty timely manner, and it's more above anything, it's neat. It does stand out a mile, and it will allow you to be able to just say, I want to stay on this site. And that, if you like a site and you're neat and your houses aren't getting any pulls, you're allowed to stay on a site, especially if you see your work. And that's one of the things they've told me. I can stay on this site as long as there's work, and that's good enough for me. It's no good when you're going on a site and they're wanting to kick you off because you're too rough, or etc. etc. Your freedoms are sort of, you've got less freedom in a sense. You're more dictated by fucking what you can get away with than what you're actually producing. So that's just one of my views with when it comes to housing and what I'm doing at the moment. But yeah, apart from that, you can see what I'm doing with the F clamps. It is a really tight setup, so sorry that I'm bent double. I managed to get the camera angle a bit better on this one, so you can see what I'm doing more. I normally have the tape attached, my smaller tape attached to my waist, but I was having to bend that low with some of this tight scaffolding. I didn't want it to fall off down the scaffold, so that was another thing I was doing. As you can see the little twisty T clampy twists, whatever you want to call them, on the lats. It's ideal for them stabilizers, allows you to move them both ways. You can either loosen the clamp on the profile or loosen the actual the powder coated gable profile itself, and move it up and down the lat to adjust your plumb, your lateral plumb point. So really, really handy piece of kit to have, and ever since I've got them, I've always found a use for them. Definitely can't recommend them enough. They come in really very handy when you're doing sort of like up an expansion and a dead man sort of thing. The ideal is a stabiliser, and I just find it's lighter than carrying goalposts around with you. You know what I mean? A couple of them you can shove them in a spare box. I shove them in my clamp box, or I'll shove them in my main box with tools if I have space. That's something else. As well, I want to make a little touch on cutting bricks. These concrete bricks cut pretty well, but if you can see, I'm using a 100mm chisel here. I've recently made a switch to a 75mm chisel for cutting, you know, the faces of brick, you know, cutting just 3/4 and stuff like that. It makes a lot nicer cut. Yeah, I find, you know, you break a lot less bricks doing it that way, and it cuts it a lot easier. And the only reason I've got a 75mm chisel is because I found it when I was cleaning the cavity. I've found some of my best tools down cavities. I've said this before and I'll say it again. You know, you can't beat finding a diamond in the rough in all this shit at the bottom of the scaffold. I found a 75mm nice lovely chisel. I don't know if it's an expensive one or not. It didn't have any footprint markings or anything, so it'll just be a cheap Chinese one, but it works fantastically. I can't recommend a 75mm chisel enough if you know you're doing a lot of cutting of bricks. Some sites have the halves already cut, but you can't beat sometimes cutting your own bricks, cutting your own halves, half, 3/4. You know, there's something satisfying about cutting all your own bricks nicely. Obviously, you're not getting paid for cutting bricks in a sense, but when you have to do it and the brick allows you to cut it well, it's very satisfying to have a good hammer and bolster, and especially a 75mm bolster chisel works very well. I find, you know, the more expensive the bolster, the better the cut. You know, I find that, you know, the better the steel, etc. I don't like to have a handguard on it. I find that it makes me lazier, and I tend to hit my hand more often with a handguard. You don't get as nice a cut. You definitely don't get as nice a cut. You don't get that travel through with the chisel like you do when you've just got a nice chisel head. You know, I've been using the ox hammers for a long time. A nice heavy hammer works well. I use the 4kg one, I think it is. I think it's a 4kg. Can't quite remember. Is it £4 something like that? Fuck knows. Biggest one ox do. I've got that one. Also, you can see me here walling the feature bricks up tight, so when there is oversailers, when you do move your profile off, I can ease that brick out 10mm, 10 or 15mm, and have a nice joint. As opposed to if I'd have put a joint on there and eased it out, I'd have had a big chalk ice joint, and that don't look very nice when you're looking up at your feature bricks. So that's another little tip. Obviously, it's more custom on your band lifts or on your your windowsill lifts at, on your ground floor lift. That's when you'll find normally some oversailing bricks, but I definitely find it easier to do it that way. Obviously, pull them out straight after you take your profile off. I'm not a fan of leaving bricks out. I just find it's a lot more snagging. It'll cost you money in the long run. Say you've got a patching price of 150 quid. If you've got to go and replace loads of bricks high up, and you'll soon burn through that it might take you a full day, and you'll be working for less than day work on a full day of patching. So you want to leave as little patching as possible. Try to get all your pinholes as well. That's another big thing, because some firms will have a patcher go around and patch it for you, like we used to, in the firm I worked for before. They used to have a patcher, and then at this firm we have a patching price. So it's something, if you don't leave any patching, that's an extra bonus on top of your plot price. As well, and if there is any patching to do, if you try and get everything you can, it'll only take you 10 or 15, 20 minutes to do, as opposed to, spending a full day doing it if you're leaving bricks out here, there and everywhere. I think I'm coming up to the end of the video now. I've only got the remainder of this course, and I think I put one brick on top of it, and that's it. I think the video cuts. So I hope you've learned something from this video with internals. They're not rocket science to set up. They just take the right setup. Preferably doing your blocks first on an internal makes it quite a bit easier. Obviously, building an internal corner on block works, no stress. But I like to do the brickwork where I can first, but I'll definitely be building block work when it comes to the internals. Normally, just for the the advantages of the gable profile stabilizers. That come in really handy for these internals. So I'll show you a full setup when I get the T-clamps, so I can show you it properly. when I took these F-clamps out, I'll be showing you next video if I actually have any footage of that. I basically slid one F-clamp out the perp, and then I slid the other F-clamp by taking a brick out and then just putting it back in. You know, it wasn't ideal. It took an extra probably 5 minutes than it would have done with T-clamps. So another pro tip for T-clamps, buy them on eBay, because BT Engineering's are well expensive and I can't afford that. You know, I'm not a millionaire. So you ain't going to be wasting money and when you're losing time and stuff when winter's coming. You know, try and get, you know, if there's a cheaper one on eBay, I always try to go for the cheaper stuff. I'm a big fan of cheap tools. It's one of them. There's a lot of benefits to cheap stuff, and you know there's benefits to buying expensive stuff, but it's knowing what to get. And sometimes it's always nice to just buy the cheap one first, and if you find it's been good, buy a bit of more of an expensive one. That's the same thing with F-clamps. You know, I've bought cheap F-clamps. If I like them, you know, if I like the type I'm using, might get some more expensive ones next time. You know, if the opportunity arises. But it's definitely something to think about with these internals. You know, but yeah. Apart from that, guys, hope you've enjoyed. Thanks a lot for the support on the videos. You know, leave us a comment, give us a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you want to see regular videos. Because you know, I've been doing a bit steady on the views and everything at the moment. I'm not really growing too fast on the channel, but I've not been putting that much effort in. And I suppose my videos are quite samey. You know, you have to really be a bricklayer to sort of enjoy them, but I'm going to try do different types of videos that aren't just headcam. I know people don't like it, people say it makes them dizzy, but I find, you know, real-time headcam is probably one of the best ways to learn some of these techniques, and I'm all about helping people and teaching people little new things, because you know, even with this internal setup I'm using, I've seen people set up similar setups, but watching someone actually lay to it makes a big difference, and it's enlightening me filming stuff as well. I learn from my own videos as well as when I do them on site. I learn and watch back, and I see, well, yeah, this is, you know, it's nice seeing it from a third person perspective, and you know, from in the moment you forget sometimes what you've done. So it's, you know, it's helpful for me as well as, you know, some of you guys who maybe aren't as, you know, versed in the internals, but you know, they're not rocket science. I'll do a full setup in the future when I've got a little bit more to go at when it comes to the internals, and I'll go through a few strategies for internal profiles in the future as well, in a future video. So anyway, guys, thanks a lot for watching. I'm going to put a little music on to see you guys out. I hope everyone's having a good week. I'm recording this on on a Tuesday night. It's Wednesday tomorrow, so we're halfway there tomorrow. It's the halfway point. So, you know, it's only a couple of days left after tonight, so hopefully you guys will be seeing this on a Thursday or probably a Friday. And then the video after this, I'll probably be continuing building this, but I'll have a different topic. And then after that, there's just some videos of me running in some gables with some funky cuts again, up some windows, so you'll see a little bit more how I do forklifts on a gable. Probably expect, you know, at least another 4 to probably a total of 6 parts to this forklift series, and then you'll probably be seeing some pikes or some gables or whatever you want to call them, top outs, cut ups, you know, ball aches of a job as people like to call them. I actually like cut ups, you know, I don't even mind, you know, traditional style ones, but I do like the fascia and soffit cut ups. I find them just nice straight bit of brickwork, especially with timber ties, you know, with the timber ties. You know, with spandrel panel, timber ties and a little damp tray in, they're no problem at all to me, those type of cut-ups. I'm not a big fan of doing blocks on cut-ups because it always tries to blow over. That's one thing about doing cut-ups with blocks, you know, with a traditional block and brick. The block work always tries to blow over, and you've obviously got to do the block work first, but with a brick cut-up with timber ties, you know, your brickwork's always got something to be attached to because the timber panel's there, so I don't find it much issue, you know, banging your timber ties in. I'll do a video on that as well, how you bang them in with some, you know, your traditional twisty timber ties instead of your little bendy metal ones. I'll show you how they go in. in the top out video. So probably expect the top out video sometime this time next week, and then, you know, I'll probably do maybe a bit of a tool review in the coming days or weeks. I'm gonna look at getting another trowel at some point, either a narrow London. I want to review a W Rose, to be honest, because I've seen guys using W Rose and I'm not sure whether I'd like it. I do like the round London, the narrow London W Rose, so I might get one of those and give it an honest review, because I've been using the Tyzacs now for about 3 years and they've been really good trowel to me, but I want to see what this hype around the W Rose is like. You know, a lot of people bang on about them and I'm not quite sure, to be honest. I know the Marshalltown are good, but W Rose, they feel very similar to a Tyzac, just picking one up actually, so yeah. Anyway guys, thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next video.